It was raining, the kind of rain that seemed to wash away the entire world. Clara had spent the day running errands in her small suburban town, and now she was home, drenched and tired. She set her umbrella in the corner, kicked off her shoes, and headed toward the kitchen. Her apartment was quiet, unusually quiet. Even the hum of the refrigerator felt distant. Clara had lived there for nearly 5 years, and every corner of the space was familiar, comforting, predictable. But that evening, something felt off. She opened the pantry to grab a box of pasta and froze. Nestled between the cans of tomatoes and the bags of rice was a folded piece of paper. The paper was old, yellowed at the edges, as if it had been waiting for her for years. She picked it up, her fingers trembling slightly, and unfolded it. The handwriting made her gasp. It was delicate, looping, and unmistakably familiar. She hadn't seen it in more than a decade. Her heart began to race, a mix of excitement and dread. It belonged to someone she had thought was gone from her life forever. Clara sank onto the kitchen floor, the note held tightly in her hands. The first line made her eyes well up. If you're reading this, it means time has brought you back to me, even if just for a moment. Her mind raced. She hadn't seen Lucas since high school, not since that summer when everything had changed. He had been her best friend, her confidant, the one person who knew every secret she had. And then, just like that, he had disappeared. No letters, no calls, no explanation, just silence. Now, here he was again, or at least his words were. The note continued, revealing fragments of thoughts, dreams, and regrets. He wrote about leaving town, about the choices he had made, and about how he had never stopped thinking of her. Each sentence was carefully crafted, heavy with emotion, yet restrained enough to make her ache with longing. Clara's fingers trembled as she traced the words. Memories flooded her mind, the way he used to make her laugh until her cheeks hurt, the long summer nights sitting under the stars, talking about everything and nothing. There had been a closeness that felt unbreakable, and yet life had a way of tearing people apart. The note mentioned a diary, a hidden diary he had left somewhere for her to find. I never knew if you'd ever want to see this, the note read, but it was always meant for you. Clara's pulse quickened. A diary? Hidden? The thought sent shivers down her spine. She checked the pantry again, carefully moving boxes and jars, but found nothing else. The note didn't say where the diary was hidden. It only hinted at a place that would bring back the summers we thought would never end. Clara's mind spun. Where could it be? She felt a mix of fear and anticipation. Part of her wanted to leave the note untouched, to let the past remain a soft memory. But another part, the part that had never really stopped caring, urged her to follow the trail. As the rain continued to tap against the windows, Clara folded the note slowly, placing it back between the cans. She felt like she was standing at the edge of a long-forgotten world, a world she hadn't dared enter for years. And yet, here she was, pulled back in by something as fragile as a piece of paper. Her heart pounded with the question she couldn't answer. Had he left this for her on purpose, knowing she would find it years later? Or had it been forgotten until fate decided to remind her? Either way, Clara knew one thing: she couldn't ignore it. If you're enjoying this story so far, please like the video and subscribe for more heartfelt tales. She stood up, gripping the edge of the counter, and made a decision. She would find the diary. She had to know what he had written, what secrets had been waiting all these years. But as she stepped back from the pantry, she noticed a shadow flicker across the window, a shadow that didn't belong to her. Her stomach tightened. Had she imagined it? Or was someone else out there, watching, waiting? Clara's heart refused to settle. The shadow outside the window lingered in her mind, though when she glanced again, there was nothing, just the rain, pouring relentlessly, blurring the world beyond her glass. She tried to shake it off, telling herself it was probably a stray branch or the reflection of her own movements, but her gut disagreed. She poured herself a cup of tea, the steam curling into the cold kitchen air. The warmth should have been comforting, but her thoughts kept drifting back to the note. Lucas, his words, the diary, the summers that were supposed to last forever. She felt as if she had stepped into a story that had been paused, waiting only for her to return. Her fingers trembled slightly as she sipped her tea, her mind racing through every memory of him. She remembered the way he would leave tiny notes in her locker at school, messages meant only for her. Sweet, silly things that made her laugh and blush. She remembered the last time they had spoken, words heavy with goodbye, promises they both knew they couldn't keep. The diary could be anywhere. Her mind ran through old memories of his house, his room, the places he had loved. But he had moved away years ago. Could he have left it somewhere in her own apartment? The idea seemed impossible, yet the note hinted at it. A place that will bring back the summers we thought would never end. She stood and began to search, moving through her apartment with quiet urgency. Every shelf, every nook, every corner seemed suddenly suspicious. Under the couch cushions, behind the fridge, tucked between books, nothing. Yet she felt certain it was close, as if the diary was waiting for her in plain sight, teasing her. Hours passed. The rain slowed to a drizzle, and the apartment grew colder. Clara wrapped herself in a blanket, pacing and thinking, trying to piece together what he could have meant. And then, in the kitchen, she spotted it, a small, almost invisible seam along the bottom of a pantry shelf. Her pulse quickened as she crouched down. She pressed gently and felt a hollow space behind it. Her fingers fumbled, and then, finally, she pulled out a small, worn, leather-bound book. Dust puffed into the air, carrying with it a faint scent of summer evenings and old paper. Her breath caught. This was it. The diary. His diary. Clara opened it carefully, afraid to damage it, afraid that the magic of finding it would shatter if she rushed. The pages were filled with the same looping handwriting, familiar and tender. The first entry was dated years ago, the summer they had last seen each other. Even reading it now, she could hear his voice in her head, whispering the words only meant for her. He wrote about ordinary things, walks to the lake, the smell of rain on pavement, quiet afternoons spent reading together. But there were also confessions, little truths he had never shared aloud, secrets about his fears, his dreams, and his longing for a friendship and love he had never fully dared to claim. Each line made Clara ache, both with joy and with pain. Hours passed unnoticed as she read, turning page after page. She felt as if she were rediscovering him all over again, walking beside him through memories frozen in time. But then, one entry made her pause, her fingers trembling. He wrote about leaving abruptly, about a mistake he had made, about something that had forced him to disappear. Clara's heart sank. She had always wondered why he had left, why he had vanished without a word. And now, hidden in these fragile pages, she had a clue. She continued reading, desperate to understand, desperate to reconnect with the person who had once meant everything. Then, in the middle of an entry, she found a loose slip of paper, tucked carefully between two pages. Her hands shook as she unfolded it. It was a map, sketchy, hand-drawn, but unmistakable. It showed a path from her apartment to a location she immediately recognized, the old treehouse near the edge of town, the one they had spent countless summers in. Her heart leapt. Could it be a message meant to lead her to him? Or a final memory he had left for her to find? The diary didn't say. It simply ended there, the words fading into uncertainty. Clara's mind raced with possibilities. Should she go? Should she wait? The rain had stopped entirely now, leaving the streets slick and glistening. Clara glanced out the window, half expecting to see him standing there, waiting, but the world outside was empty. Yet somehow she felt his presence, as if he were already ahead of her, silently watching, silently waiting for her to follow. And in that moment, she made a decision. She would go to the treehouse. She would see what he wanted her to find. Whatever truth he had hidden, whatever message he had left, she had to know. But just as she reached for her coat, she noticed something else. A second note, pinned to the refrigerator this time, written in the same familiar handwriting. Her stomach twisted as she read the first line. Some secrets are easier to follow in person. Clara stared at the note on her refrigerator, her hands shaking slightly. The words seemed to hum with anticipation, pulling her towards something she wasn't sure she was ready to face. She carefully read the line again. Some secrets are easier to follow in person. The implication was clear. Lucas wanted her to go somewhere, to see, to discover, to feel what he had left behind. Her mind raced. It was late, the streets outside still wet from the rain, and yet she felt an irresistible pull, a connection she hadn't felt in years. She couldn't ignore it. She grabbed her coat, slipping on her boots and tucking the diary safely under her arm. Every step she took toward the door felt heavy with both dread and excitement. What awaited her at the treehouse? Would it be a simple memory, a playful reminder of summers long past, or something deeper, something that could change everything? The streets were silent, except for the occasional drip of water from awnings and trees. Clara kept her eyes on the familiar path, the old sidewalks that led to the outskirts of town. Memories flooded back, the bike rides, the laughter, the quiet moments sitting in the grass watching the sunset. Each memory felt like a whisper, reminding her of how close they had once been. When she finally arrived at the treehouse, her breath caught in her throat. It hadn't changed much, save for the weathered wood and the faint scent of moss and old leaves. It was as if time had paused here, keeping their shared past alive, waiting for this very moment. Clara climbed the ladder cautiously. Each step creaked beneath her weight, and a thrill ran through her. At the top, she stepped onto the small platform, her eyes scanning the space. And then she saw it. Another envelope, taped delicately to the railing. Her heart pounded. She tore it open, revealing another note. This one was shorter, more urgent. I left something inside the treehouse. Look carefully. It's for you, and only you. Trust yourself to find it. Clara's hands trembled as she scanned the space. Boxes of old memories were stacked in corners. Faded blankets, dusty books, and trinkets from years ago were scattered around. She moved slowly, touching items that brought back vivid flashes of their friendship, each one tugging at her heart. Finally, in a small, hidden compartment beneath the floorboards, she found a box. It was simple, wooden, but sturdy. Her fingers traced the carved initials on top, L and C, intertwined. She lifted the lid and gasped. Inside were dozens of letters, each carefully folded, tied with ribbon, and dated from years ago. The first letter she picked up was from the summer they had last spent together. Reading it, she felt the flood of emotion she had long suppressed. Lucas had written about his fear of leaving, about how much he had treasured their time together, and about the promise he had made to always find a way back to her, even if life took him elsewhere. Tears pricked at her eyes. She realized this wasn't just nostalgia. This was a message, a bridge from the past, meant to reconnect them, meant to show her that some bonds could never truly be broken. As she continued through the box, she found photographs, ticket stubs, and mementos from trips they had taken together. Each item seemed carefully chosen, deliberately preserved. It was a map of their shared history, a trail he had left for her to follow. Then she found a small key tied to the last letter. The letter read, "If you are reading this, you are ready. The key unlocks a place where I kept my last secret, something I never shared until now. Go there and you will understand everything." Clara's pulse quickened. A place where he had kept his last secret? Her curiosity battled with caution. What could it be? A hidden diary? Another message? Something he had never told anyone? The anticipation made her stomach flutter in a way she hadn't felt in years. She tucked the key into her pocket and looked around once more. The treehouse seemed alive with memories, as if Lucas had just stepped away moments ago. She could almost hear his voice, whispering through the wind that rustled the leaves around her. A sudden sound made her freeze, a branch snapping nearby. She held her breath, heart racing. For a moment, she thought she was imagining things. But then, from the shadows of the trees, a figure emerged. Not fully visible yet, but familiar enough to make her knees weak. Her heart skipped a beat. Could it really be him? After all these years, standing here, in the place that held their memories, could Lucas have been waiting for her this whole time? Clara's heart hammered in her chest as the figure stepped closer. Rain still clung to the leaves, glinting in the dim evening light, and she squinted to make out the face. Her breath caught. It was him, Lucas, after all these years, standing just a few feet away. He looked older, more mature, but unmistakably him. The same warmth in his eyes, the same easy smile that had once made her heart race. For a moment, neither of them spoke. They just stood there, letting the years of absence and silence fill the space between them. Finally, Lucas broke the quiet. "I wasn't sure you'd come." His voice was soft, careful, but filled with emotion. Every word seemed measured, as if he had rehearsed it 1,000 times in his mind. Yet it sounded real, genuine, and it made Clara's chest tighten with a mix of relief and longing. "I had to," she whispered, clutching the key tightly in her hand. "The notes, the diary, everything led me here. I had to see for myself." He nodded, his gaze drifting toward the treehouse. "I wanted you to find the letters first. I needed you to understand everything before we met again. I didn't want to rush it. There are things I need to show you, things I couldn't explain in words." Clara felt her throat tighten. She had waited for this moment for over a decade, and now that it was here, it felt almost surreal. She remembered the summers they had shared, the laughter, the secrets, the closeness that had defined their youth. And now, standing before him, all of that seemed to pulse through her like a living memory. Lucas reached into his coat and pulled out a small envelope, much like the one she had discovered in the treehouse. "This is the last piece," he said, handing it to her. "It's where I kept the part of me I never shared with anyone." Clara took it, her fingers brushing his, sending a familiar shiver through her. She unfolded the paper and read the words carefully. He had written about his deepest regrets, the mistakes that had forced him to leave, and the way he had carried her memory with him through every difficult moment. Tears welled in her eyes. "I never stopped wondering why you left," she said softly. "I never understood." "I know," he replied, his voice breaking slightly. "And I'm sorry. I was scared. Scared of losing you by trying to stay. Scared of staying and causing more hurt. But I never forgot. Not once." The wind picked up, rustling the leaves around them, as if the world itself was leaning in to listen. Clara stepped closer, feeling the years of distance melt away. The weight of unanswered questions, the heartache, the longing, they all seemed to vanish in that moment. Lucas smiled gently. "I've left clues for a reason. I wanted you to see how much you meant to me, how much our friendship and everything we shared has shaped who I am. I wanted you to understand that some bonds, they never break." Clara's heart ached with emotion. "I've never stopped thinking of you either," she admitted. "Every summer, every memory, it's always been with me. I thought I'd lost you forever." He reached for her hand, holding it as if to anchor both of them in that exact moment. "You never did, and now maybe we can start again, not just with memories, but with the chance to create new ones." Clara nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. The rain had stopped entirely, leaving the world washed clean and glistening. For the first time in years, she felt hope. Not the hesitant hope of a child, but the deep, grounded hope of someone ready to embrace what had been lost. They sat together in the treehouse, sharing stories, reading from the diary, and revisiting letters. Every word, every memory, stitched them closer together, mending the years of silence and absence. And yet, even as they laughed and cried, Clara felt a subtle tension, a lingering secret that Lucas hadn't revealed just yet. Finally, he looked at her with a serious expression. "There's one last thing I need to show you," he said. "Something that explains everything. Something that's been waiting for you all this time." Clara's pulse quickened. Her heart swelled with anticipation, and for the first time in years, she felt the thrill of truly stepping into the unknown with someone she trusted completely. But before he could speak again, a sudden sound echoed from below the treehouse, soft but deliberate, like someone else was there. Clara froze, gripping the edge of the railing. Lucas tensed beside her. Who else could it be, here, in the shadows of a place filled with their memories? Clara's heart raced as her eyes scanned the shadows below the treehouse. Rain had left the ground slick, and the dim light of the evening made it difficult to see clearly. Whoever, or whatever it was, had moved with purpose, and the sound had been deliberate. "Stay here," Lucas whispered, though his voice carried both caution and urgency. He slid down the ladder carefully, keeping his movements quiet. Clara's hands tightened around the diary and the key, her mind spinning with questions. Who could possibly be here now, after all these years, in a place that had belonged only to them? From the tree line, a figure emerged. At first, it was difficult to make out, but as they stepped into a shaft of fading light, Clara gasped. It was an elderly man, familiar somehow, yet older and weathered by time. Recognition sparked in her mind. He looked like someone she had seen in her childhood, someone who had been connected to Lucas, but whom she hadn't thought about in years. "Clara," the man said gently, his voice carrying a softness that made her uneasy, yet reassured. "I didn't mean to startle you." He held up his hands in peace. "I've been keeping something safe for Lucas, something he wanted you to find when the time was right." Clara's eyes flicked to Lucas, who nodded slightly, signaling her to listen. Her heart thumped violently. The pieces of the past, the notes, the diary, the key, all seemed to converge in this moment. The man stepped closer and handed her a small, locked box. Lucas gave me this years ago. He said it was meant for you, but only when you were ready. Clara's fingers shook as she took it, the lock cold and unyielding against her palms. Lucas came down beside her and knelt. "This is my final secret," he said softly. "Everything else was memories, letters, reminders. This is the part of me I never shared. The truth behind why I left, why I disappeared, and why I needed you to find all of this now." With a trembling hand, Clara used the key from her pocket. The lock clicked open, and she lifted the lid. Inside was a collection of items, photographs, trinkets, and a small journal. But there was one thing that made her breath catch: a letter addressed to her, written in Lucas's familiar handwriting. She unfolded it carefully. His words spilled across the page, raw and honest. He spoke of the fear that had driven him away, the choices that had kept him silent, and the way he had carried her memory like a lifeline through lonely years. He admitted that he had always hoped she would find the notes, the diary, and finally this box. Every step had been planned, every clue left for her, so she could understand him, understand their bond, and know that it had never faded. Tears streamed down Clara's face as she looked up at Lucas. You planned all of this?" she whispered, her voice breaking. "All of it? For me?" Lucas nodded, his eyes glistening. "I wanted you to see that I never left you behind in my heart. I wanted you to feel the truth, without me speaking it until the moment was right." She reached for his hand, and this time he didn't hesitate. Their fingers intertwined, the years of distance and silence dissolving in the warmth of that simple touch. They spent the next hour in the treehouse, sharing stories, revisiting memories, and finally confronting the years they had lost. The diary, the letters, the photographs, they were all threads weaving together a tapestry of their shared past, now ready to become part of their present. As night fell, they stepped outside the treehouse, the sky painted with stars. The world felt infinite, alive with possibility. Clara knew that life would continue to have its challenges, its twists and turns, but for the first time in a long time, she felt whole. She felt seen, understood, and cherished, not just by the memories of what had been, but by the man standing beside her, ready to face the future together. Lucas squeezed her hand gently. "We've found each other again," he said, his voice steady, "and this time we won't let go." Clara smiled, tears still glistening, but her heart light. "No," she whispered, "not ever." They stood together under the stars, the past finally reconciled with the present. Every note, every diary entry, every secret had led them here, to each other, to a second chance that felt more real and precious than anything they had known before. And though the night was quiet, the world felt full, alive with the promise of tomorrow, a promise they would embrace, hand in hand, hearts entwined, ready for whatever came next. The secret of the diary, the notes, and the hidden box was no longer a mystery. It was a story of love, trust, and the extraordinary lengths time could take to bring two people back together. And in the gentle night, with rain-kissed streets and the soft glow of stars above, Clara finally understood. Some bonds are never truly broken. They simply wait for the right moment to be rediscovered. The years of longing, the secrets, the silent messages, they had all led her to this moment of quiet, perfect clarity. She had found him, And together, they had found the courage to embrace everything that had been waiting for them all along. The past and the present had collided, and in that collision, love had finally found its way home.